22 minutes of moderate exercise. It not only reduces your risk of type 2 diabetes between 60 and 70%, it enhances mood. It's as effective as antidepressant medication. And it's the one thing you're not going to feel like doing, so just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. It's just like Nike says, just do it.
Welcome to First Responder Fitness with Carl Wimmer, where armor is forged through mental, spiritual, and physical preparation. Welcome to First Responder Fitness, my friends, with Carl Wimmer. I am your host, and I am so honored that you're joining us again today. Such an amazing opportunity to continue to look to the future and continue to pursue our goals of health and prosperity and longevity. Well, today we bring you part 2 of the interview I had with Dr. Kevin Gilmartin, the author of Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement. What an amazing book. What a fantastic opportunity and an honor it was to sit down with Dr. Gilmartin and to just listen to him talk. If you are a first responder of any kind, whether it be law enforcement or a firefighter or paramedic, whatever the case may be, perhaps you served in the military or you have a loved one in any of those fields of employment, I encourage you to watch the entire interview. If you haven't seen part 1, go back a couple episodes ago. We posted part 1. This is now part 2. I encourage you to watch them all. There is so many nuggets of knowledge and information that you can glean from this interview. So sit back, relax, and enjoy part 2 of our interview with Dr. Kevin Gilmartin.
My biggest complaint about this whole field is how siloed it is. Police started having mental health programs in the 1960s. The earliest one I can remember is Los Angeles Police Department had a psychologist, Dr. Marty Reiser, at the LAPD in the 60s. New York had Dr. Harvey Schlossberg, 60s, early 70s. And these were pioneers. They were brilliant psychologists. But if you think about it, you have to take the culture. You can have a wonderful psychologist, but if the police officers are these terribly distrusting people who don't see any value in it, they're not going to go to them. I was in South Dakota about 2 weeks ago. I had it was by the state of South Dakota brought me in. And I was in the city. I won't identify this city, but it's a pretty large city. And they provided a free training on emotional survival, a seminar. So all their cops could go to the seminar for free. And the chief didn't send anybody. The chief did not send a single person because he didn't see any value in emotional survival training because it was touchy-feely. And I'm thinking, I lived through that. It was called the 1970s. But this is 2024, and we still have morons like that as chiefs of police. And I'm thinking, wow. And that's not a leader, that's a boss.
That is exactly what came to my mind. Is that is not a leader. That's an administrator who fails to see the value, I think, in his workers.
His value is his badge has more power than your badge, and so his badge beats your badge. So you're not going to that training, but that's okay because that person will either call in sick or the person will maybe put in for a stress disability or we've just ruined the person's life. So now the person is 65, they're retired for 10 years. And instead of going for a camping trip across the country or going for a cruise, they're going for dialysis or they're going for chemotherapy or they're having surgery. And I'm looking at that thinking, what's a shame? That really is a shame. We not only injure them early in their lives, we injure them into the premature death syndromes across the span of a law enforcement officer's life.
You have just unintentionally surmised or summarized the exact purpose and mission statement of this podcast, because the goal of our goal at First Responder Fitness is not only to change the culture of physical fitness, mental fitness, and spiritual fitness, but to do that for longevity's purpose, what good does it do to retire and then just doctor hop for the next 20 years and not enjoy it? You've worked your tail off throughout your career, and then at the end of your career, you retire into a life of of unhealthiness, dysfunction, disability, and it's horrible. And I see it all the time.
And I see it in young people. That when I say young, someone who's a cop 15 years is still a kid as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
They're like in their mid 30s maybe, and I look at what does this job cost them? Well, we know we have a 40% obesity rate in American policing, 40%, and we have an 80+% sleep impairment rate. So to me, the two big red flags that we have damaged a police officer is incremental weight gain and sleep impairment. Let's just go with the sleep impairment. The average cop sleeps 4 to 6 hours a night. It's whereas we know for maintenance of wellness and functionality, we have to have 7 to 8 hours of sleep,
Absolutely,
preferably more. A police officer versus a factory worker in a judgment reaction times test, the police officer makes 600% more errors, 6 times the errors of a factory worker for reaction time and judgment. We do these little tests. You see them with these video tests of shoot, don't shoot. Well, yes. That's not a reaction time test. That's cop versus a civilian on a shoot, don't shoot scenario. That's more of a knowledge of your subject matter expertise. Cops know the lethal force policy. They know when they can use lethal force and when they can't. And it's like testing you versus a carpenter and who can pound more nails quickly. I mean, It's really occupation specific. But when we go to occupation content neutral reaction time studies, police officers suck. They lose. Wow. And the only differentiation between the civilian and the police officer, the factory worker versus the cop, was sleep.
Oh, it's huge.
And if you think of an error, when a police officer makes an error, a reaction time error, or a judgment error, it can be something simple as, taser, 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 then bang, the gun goes off. And we want to vilify that person as opposed to saying that person there needed to be better trained, not just on how to handle the taser, but how much sleep do we have to have? How many brutality cases start with a cop who's sleep deprived, they're just angry, they're emotionally not wired to be there that day, and the guy mouths off and the cop shuts their mouth. And then in the world of video cameras and body cams today, that cop maybe loses his job, maybe loses their freedom for that. And I'm looking at and our solution a lot of times is more psychological training. Well, yeah, that's good. I'm a psychologist, so I'm for that. But sure. Where's the physical? Where's the time in the gym? Where's the time on the elliptical or the treadmill to reduce that physiology there? Now, the other issue is incremental weight gain. Cops get fat. Cops get real fat. And traditionally, we joke about cops getting fat, the big fat cop, the donut eating cop. But cops get fat for the same reason that bears hibernate. That's why cops get fat, for the same reason bears hibernate. Bears get fat prior to hibernation, not because they overeat. It's because they overstore. In around September, the bear has an instinctive increase in cortisol. Their cortisol level skyrockets. The cortisol hits the liver. The liver releases blood glucose into the bloodstream. That's the energy the bear has when they go out and tear apart your cabin and root through the garbage cans or foraging for the winter that's coming. But that glucose that's energizing and motivating that bear is the exact same glucose that motivates the young cop to say, I'd be doing this for free. The 2-year cop who says, I'd be a cop for free. I can't believe they pay us to do this, because it's this physical sensation I can remember writing a paper on this many years ago called The Brotherhood of Biochemistry. Cops know what it feels like to be a cop. We can
Yes.
take you from your part of the world, and I can take you to Boston, or I can take you to San Diego or San Antonio, totally alien environments to where you're from, but you will know what it feels like to walk up on a car at 2 a.m. That's a
Yeah.
physiological state. So the bear has this elevated blood glucose, that, and that's what motivates them to go out and do their job. But
Yep.
the pancreas kicks out insulin, and it grabs a big percentage of this blood glucose and it pulls it outside of the metabolic process so it doesn't get burned up. It gets to be stored because it's like we don't know how long this threat is going to last. So pull back some of these resources and store them. And where the glucose gets stored is in the fat cells around the abdominal area. It gets pushed through the glucose receptor into the lipid cell, so it's available to be metabolized if the threat were to continue. It's the same as the cop. When you load up to go out in the field, you take your weapon, which is loaded, but you also take extra magazines because you don't know how long the threat might possibly proceed and
Right.
last. Well, your body does the same thing. It infuses glucose through the glucose receptor into the fat cell in direct proportion to how much cortisol is being secreted. Well, the cops don't use the word cortisol. They'll talk about adrenaline.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it's the same thing. So by just practicing officer safety, you get fat. You don't have to eat donuts. All you got to do is go out and be a cop and not exercise, and
Yep.
you're stored. The glucose is in the fat cell, and after about 7 or 8 years, the glucose receptor breaks down, and the glucose doesn't get into the fat cell anymore. It remains kind of free radical into the bloodstream, and now the officer's blood glucose level starts creeping up, and that's and we measure this with an outdated measurement, A1C, and by the time
A1C.
it's actually in the pathological range, you have type 2 diabetes, which is the policeman's disease. Um, and that can be prevented with looking at different concepts, looking at different physiological measurements. And right in the last year or two, several medical groups have come up with early detection of type 2 diabetes in police officers, which are game changers. We
Yeah.
can detect this disease risk factor 15 years in advance, and the officer doesn't have to go down that path any longer.
Yeah, you can detect insulin resistance before it ever becomes, full blown diabetes. And
Absolutely.
but as you're sitting there talking, I picture a snowball rolling down a hill because you have that physiological biological effect. And it is just exacerbated when you don't get enough sleep, because not getting enough sleep makes that worse. And then not exercising, you're just living in a pool of disaster, eventual health disaster.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's amazing to me. We have these resources to solve these problems. We have them, but they're in their own little silos. As you mentioned when you introduced me, I was a charter member of the International Association of Chiefs of Police Psychological Services section.
Yep.
And when that section first started, way, way, way back years ago, almost every paper or every person speaking was speaking about psychological testing. They were talking about pre-employment and fitness for duty testing, and everybody was into that category. Now, across the hallway, the police physicians group would be meeting. Here, the psychologists are in room one, the physicians are in group two, and in group two, they're talking about what standards of testing we should have medically to be a police officer, and when should we release this officer back on duty? And all of these are legitimate sources of study. I mean,
Sure.
they're important, but they're in their own little silos. They're not even
Yeah. Why
cross.
are they all separated?
Yeah. And finally, recently, the International Association of Chiefs of Police has a section on officer wellness, which is, hey, stop all of this stuff. Let's have some wellness. Well, how do we keep
Yeah.
cops fit? How do we have them well? Uh,
Yes.
and when you increase an officer's wellness, not only have you added to the quality of the officer's life and their family's life, you've aided the community. Uh, Robert Kennedy Sr., the Attorney General from many, many, many years ago, um, I heard him speak one time. And this is a long time ago. It was 1968. I heard him speak. It was the year he was assassinated. And he made a statement. He said, every police department, I'm sorry, he said, every community has the police department that it deserves. And it's like, what does that mean? Every community has the police department it deserves. Well,
Wow.
if you don't invest in your police officers and you don't fund your police officers, you'll have a police department that you earned it. That's your police department. They're a bunch of thugs that are out there brutalizing people and becoming corrupt. If you invest in police officers, if you screen them, you invest in them, have career enhancement for them, then you'll be proud of that police department, and they will serve your community well through the duration of their career. And that was about 55, 58 years ago. I heard that.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
message still hasn't, we're now just starting to get our teeth into that. The fire service, on the other hand, has handled it very differently. The fire department didn't start with mental health services. They didn't hire psychologists like the police departments did. They probably the majority of wellness programs for the fire service started with the Air Florida disaster with Dr. Jeffrey Mitchell, who was at that time a firefighter, paramedic in, I believe, Maryland area. And Air Florida goes into the Potomac, catastrophic night, police and fire seeing unforgettable trauma. And he went around and started discussing what had happened with groups of firefighter paramedics, because that was part of their culture. They would debrief after a call because they went into harm's way as groups. Cops go into harm's way as individuals. And a lot of people say that was historically where the traumatic stress debriefing movement started there. And it's grown, obviously, tremendously. But it was not started by having psychiatrists and psychologists. It was started by having peers run it. And it was just brilliant because with peers, you can, for the most part, you can trust a peer. I don't know the psychologist. I don't know this Dr. Gilmartin. Can I trust him? If I talk to Dr. Gilmartin, is he going to go tell the chief? Am I going to lose my badge? Am I going to lose my job? But Billy over here, we went to the academy together. We went to the fire academy together. And I think that's why, finally, although policing had the mental health services decades before fire did, we learned from the fire. They were the ones that taught about the value of peer support and the value of peer-driven debriefings. And now it's both programs use them intensely.
Yes.
But
the last 2 years of my career, I was the head of our peer support group. So, and it was a brand new program, at least for my police department. I was one of just a few of us that started the peer support in our police department. So,
well, there was a talk about, one of the things, I think one of the best blessings I've had professionally is I do a lot of training. And so I get to go to police departments in every city in the United States. I mean, it's really hard to name an area that I haven't been to. I mean, you told me where you were at, and I knew the highway by where you were at. So as I look at that, you see regional programs started, but there seems to be three approaches to this. And the triad, it was chaplaincy programs, peer support programs, and mental health programs. And when those three approaches can coordinate together and work jointly, then we're getting the services to folks. Because so many people, because of this depressive state after work, they pull away from their physical fitness. They pull away from their spirituality, and they start having strain in their marriage and their relationships. And they escape it by going back to work the next day. So their policing career becomes better and better and better, but their personal life really starts sucking.
Yeah.
and then they
Yes.
reach a point in life where the kids are gone, the kids are raised, and there's not a lot of joy in their life. And I hate seeing that.
No, I
Uh,
do too. I do too. And I I want to. I know time is short here, but I'd like to throw something out at you and allow you to correct it or expand on it, because this is something that you discuss in the emotional support, emotional survival for law enforcement book. And I've been chewing on this, and my thoughts are this: if you're a police officer who enters into the career and does not take physically, you do not exercise, you do not put in the work to take care of your body physically, um, and you're not getting the sleep you need to get, and your identity becomes not what you do, but it is what you are. Like when people say, hey, what do you do for a living? Will, you say, I am a cop. I'm a cop, instead of I do police work. It consumes who you are. My contention is that nearly 100% of the people who that describes are heading to burnout. The burnout, that career burnout is inevitable.
well, yeah, because
Would you
burnout
disagree? Or
is no, that's what burnout is. It's the syndrome of overcommitment that leads to underproductivity. That's burnout. But the other thing is, if your whole identity, if your whole world revolves around being a police officer,
yep,
and I'm the chief of police, I control your role as a police officer. Therefore, I control your whole world. Um, I, I, you're the commander of the SWAT team. Is
I
that
was, yes,
okay,
yes.
so let's say I'm your new chief of police. I can make you the non-commander of the SWAT team. I can take you off the SWAT team and bury you on midnights at the dog pound. And if you're so, I've just rattled your whole world as opposed to just changing your assignment. And the more over-invested somebody becomes, the more psychologically vulnerable they are. One
Because they have no control at that point. They have no control of their own world.
absolutely, and that's mentally healthy people have to control what's important in their life. I do a little gig in classes when I'm training cops. I come in and I do this little role play. They don't know it's a role play, but I'll say I'll kind of dummy up and say, "What's your hat policy here?" And they'll say, "Oh, it's optional. It's optional. You can put it on if you want to put it on. Take it off if you don't." I said, "It's optional." Yeah, it's optional. I said, "There's no optional in baseball. There's no optional in baseball." Let me tell you, if I'm the chief of police here, my first day as the chief of police, I'm going to make hats mandatory. Hats are mandatory, period. And they'll go, bullshit, you can't do it. I can do it. The Supreme Court has already ruled on that. I have that right to set uniform standards and grooming standards, and barring a clear showing of adverse impact to a protected class, I win. So
You're going to have a mutiny.
I can make you wear a hat. And they'll say, I got to wear a hat when I step out of the car? Yes. Then I won't step out of the car. And so you're going to throw away your entire professionalism, because the first sign of corruption for a police officer is not doing wrong. It's to stop doing right. And so you're going to have, it's called an act of omission over a hat policy. Now, you took an oath that said you will serve and protect the Constitution and obey all lawful orders, right?
Yep.
Yes. My order for you to put a hat on is a lawful order. It doesn't require any emotion. But that's where we get this overinvestment. We invest emotion into the hat policy. So at 9:00 at night, that guy is texting his BFF, all pissed off about my hat policy, but he's putting more energy invested in the hat policy than he is in his son's reading level. See, that's what happens. And so
I've got to be honest with you. As you were talking about that, and I've been out of law enforcement, I've been retired for 4 years now, but I was able to put myself in the mindset of someone who, where all of a sudden a new chief comes in and says, this is now mandatory. And I could feel myself kind of getting irritated at what you were talking about. And so it tells me that as emotionally healthy as I feel I am, that even bothered me. And you're,
Absolutely. It
wow.
bothers you because you're investing emotion into things that you don't control. You don't control the hat policy. You do
Right.
control if you go over your son's homework every
Yep.
night. You do
Yep.
control if you're going to go to CrossFit after class, after work today. You do control if you and your wife are going for a hike this weekend. You don't control if I'm going to change the patch on your uniform. And if you want to keep investing energy into these trivial, irrelevant aspects of policing, you'll be one pissed off guy who walks around angry. And this is where leadership misses it in law enforcement. They really miss it. They'll say, this guy's a malcontent. He bitches about everything. He doesn't give a shit about his job. He bitches about everything. He doesn't give a shit about his job. And I'll say, Chief, can I ask you a question? Sure. So this guy's a malcontent. Oh, yeah. Bitches about everything. And he doesn't give a shit about his job. Yeah, that's right. Chief, would you give me one example where you have ever bitched about something that you didn't give a shit about? Bitching is a form of giving a shit. Your malcontent officer's problem is not that they don't give a shit about policing. It's the only thing they give a shit about, and they don't control it. And so that's where you say, I can handle the idiots on the street better than the idiots in the administration, because those are the people who screw you over. Well, yeah, because those are the people that control your role. And everything in life is your role to you, and they control your role. So I can
Wow.
take you off the SWAT team as a catastrophic event in your life. And
And it
and
would
it's
have been.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's where it has nothing to do with it has nothing to do with your expertise as a SWAT officer. Is working in an authority-based hierarchy. And when you are in an emotionally based hierarchy, an authority-based hierarchy,
Right.
there are people up the ladder from you that control your role. They don't control your integrity. They don't control your professionalism. They don't control your officer safety, but they sure as hell do control whether you have to wear a hat or not. And they
Yeah.
do control whether you are the SWAT team commander or not.
Yep.
And, as I was going through my own policing career, uh, I realized, I started thinking about the things that just pissed me off. And they just pissed me off. And they were stupid little things, stupid little things. And then I realized, why am I putting emotion into this? And I
Wow.
realized I had a commander. We called him Darth Vader. And he wasn't as nice as Darth Vader's. And in our department, you had take home cars.
Mhm.
And everybody got a take home car. It was part of everybody. That was part of one of the contracts every year.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean all cars are equal.
Right.
Well, the
Right.
car that I had was a real piece of crap. And it was it was by far the worst car. And we would have some formal thing to go to, like a police funeral or something. And the guys that were in my unit would say, "Hey, boss, let's not take your car. It's terrible. It's an embarrassment." I said, "Okay." He said, "Why don't you get a new car?" And it was because Darth Vader controlled those cars. And one time Darth comes up and he goes, "Don't you wish you could get a new car?" "So this car here?" I said, "No." I said, "I got a new car." "What do you mean you got a new car?" I said, I got a new car. We bought a Honda Accord, Eddie Bauer. It's a great car.
Nice.
It's a wonderful. He said, "I'm talking about your company car." I said, "Oh, this piece of crap." I said, "This piece of crap is not a reflection of me. This piece of crap is a reflection of the idiot who runs the fleet. If that idiot wants to put cars like this out on the road, I don't get to choose the car. I'll drive it. I only get to choose what I do when I step out of this car." And pretty shortly, I got a new car, but I wasn't going to invest my energy into his car. He controlled the car, but he
Yep.
wasn't going to control my professional investment. I control that. I and that's the
That is,
hardest thing to get through cops' heads, because they care deeply about their policing career.
yes.
They'll invest all their energy into the policing career, and somebody else controls a lot of that policing career. Um,
That is an extremely healthy. You must have had some years on by that time because you were quite mature in your thinking. I don't
well,
know.
I, early on, I started looking at the difference between an emotional survivor and an emotional victim. And that's why we call the book Emotional Survival. Um, Survivors focus in on things that they do control. Victims focus in on things they don't control. Um, if,
That
if I'm the
is,
chief, if I'm the chief of police, I control the hat policy. You
yep,
don't. So if you want to put all your energy into the hat policy, you're empowering me.
and you're going to
And
lose.
yes, you are. Yes. And I love doing the hat thing because that sets cops off. I mean, if there's a universal thing, it's cops and hats. And I'll say, how many of you have baseball caps? They'll all raise their hand. I said, good, good. I want you to wear those when you play baseball. That's why they're called baseball caps. They're not called cop hats. And I bring out this stupid 8-point hat like the East Coast cops all wear. This is the
Mm-hmm.
mandatory. And they're not sure I'm playing with them yet. They think I'm serious. And oh my, they melt down. I'm thinking, buddy, this hat is not nearly as important as your heart health. It's not nearly as important as your blood glucose level. It's not nearly as important as your marriage, as your children.
That's
I've
right.
dealt with a lot of cops later in life when they're facing death. I've never had one say, Doc, my time is pretty close now. I sure as hell wish I didn't have to wear that hat. What they say is, I wish I had spent more time with my kids. I
Yeah.
hope the people that I love know that I love them and I did the best job I could do. And I said, I'm sure that they know those things. But
Amen.
all this stuff, we waste so much energy on this irrelevant bullshit, for lack of a better term, and we're
Yep.
not investing it in the things that are relevant, which ironically are things that we control. In the book Emotional Survival, we depict this as a roller coaster, and your personal life is at the bottom of the roller coaster. That's where you have control, but you're not doing anything there. And
Right.
that's where people start talking about, I used to fish, I used to lift weights, I used to ride my mountain bike. And they're admitting it's ironic because they'll use the past tense when they're talking about their personal life, but they'll all be all pissed off in the present tense about the hat policy. They're all worked up
Oh,
about hat policy, but the things that actually define their life they put on the back burner until they retire. When I retire, I'm going to start fishing. I'm going to start exercising, and
yep.
that's where we get this victim versus survivor dichotomy. And that was the theme of the book, Emotional Survival. I want to point something out, if I could here. We have a
Please
copy.
do.
I have a. Oh, here's the book. The book has a yellow line on it here, revised
Yep.
edition. Because one day we just Googled and we found out that there were more of these books sold on on Amazon than than were ever produced. The Chinese had cloned the book. God bless them; they're very entrepreneurial, and the majority of books that were being sold were cloned, counterfeited copies. So right now, the book is totally controlled. It is only one point of sale on the book, and I was kind of honored that the Chinese thought the book was
Yeah.
successful enough
Yeah.
that they had to clone it, and we're selling it unlawfully on Amazon. So we got that stopped.
So let me ask you this: are all the sales on Amazon are they okay at this point? Then.
Yes, there's only one point of sale for a new book on Amazon. It's Hope for Heroes. It's a group that we work
Yep.
with, and they make significant contributions to law enforcement. So we're trusting with them, and there's only one place in the U.S. for the book, and that's you can get it on the internet platforms, but it
Yes.
always sources from one place.
Perfect. Because a couple weeks ago I did a Christmas wish list episode where I listed, I don't know, 10, 12 different things that loved ones could get their first responder. Your book was one of them, and I link to it directly in the show notes to Amazon. And I want to make sure that it's not going to be
Yeah.
one of the Chinese ripoffs. So
No. They're off the market. It took us 2 years of a real gun battle to get it done, but we got it done. And
perfect.
I'm not trying to talk on the book, but the book was an afterthought. We were giving lectures and training to police for 30 years. And I had a guy that worked in the unit that I supervised. And he said, you need to write a book. I said, I don't want to write a book. I couldn't care less about writing a book. He goes, you need to write a book. I said, why do I need to write a book? He said, because when you die, all your ideas die too. I said, boy, you're a cheerful soul, aren't you? You don't think graveyards are full of ideas that should have been written down? I said, you know what? I've never thought that. I've thought that. So he said, this is good information and you should write it down to make it available. So we did. We took the entire program of emotional survival as we were teaching it around the U.S. and Australia and Canada, and we wrote the book. And that came out, the first edition came out about 20 years ago, and then we've revised it about 9 times since then, trying to get updated statistics and research. But I've been shocked at how successful the book has been, and it's not because it's a well-written book, because I wrote it and I'm not a good writer, and but I'm in Wisconsin one winter night, and I'm being driven to the head of the Wisconsin State Patrol where they train, and I get in a car accident. I'm being driven by a car service, hits a deer,
Oh, wow.
and the driver gets injured, and I'm in the back seat. I'm fine. So the troopers arrive, and they shoot the deer because it wasn't quite done in yet, and they get an ambulance for the driver, and I'm waiting there. He says, I'll wait here for you till a new car service shows up for you. So we start talking, and the trooper goes, where are you going to? So I'm going out to your outfit, out to your training academy. He goes, what are you gonna talk on? I said, I'm going to talk on the topic called emotional survival. And the trooper goes, oh, like that asshole Gilmartin. So I said, well, yeah, I'm Gilmartin. He goes, hang on. He goes back to his patrol car, and he brings back a dog-eared copy of the book with tape on it and Post-its. He goes, I just was going to send you an email because I wanted to ask you a question. I said, would you do me a favor? Next time you want to talk to me, send the email. Don't send the deer, because I don't want to be sitting here at 2:00 in the morning in the winter in Wisconsin talking to you about that. But I've been absolutely astounded at, and the book is a testimonial, not to my writing, but to the message that these cops who have been studying for 50 years.
Yes.
It might be my mouth and my fingers that typed it, but it was their stories that led to it. And so that's what it's the story of some cops and their lives and what happened to them. And the goal was just, how do we help these cops have a better life? How do we help them be happier and spend their years on this planet healthier and happier, and not fighting diseases they don't have to fight, and not losing marriages, and not having children alienated by divorce and the fracturing of policing families. And if we can do that, then we'll accomplish something.
Oh, that's beautiful. I tell you, I don't know who that was that told you needed to write a book, but that man needs to be thanked, and I thank him for that. To kind of summarize or to conclude this, you say at the end of your book, emotional survival is a lifelong process. And I absolutely agree. Emotional survival is a lifelong process. So just, I guess, give us a final summation of perhaps your best advice to a new officer, this wet behind the ears, super excited, can't believe he gets paid to do the job. What do you tell him to make sure that his family stays together, his career is prosperous, his health stays together, so that this guy has a prosperous future?
There's 3 pillars that I base my work on. The first one is time management. That every police officer should have a written calendar posted on their refrigerator, hard copy. Stick it right on the refrigerator with magnets, and on that calendar should be the things you are going to do this week. They might be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, lift weights. Tuesday, Thursday, jog. Sunday, early church service. Friday night, dinner with Bill and Meg. and those should be written early in the week. The whole week should be posted so you have something to look forward to that you control. It enhances the control ratio, because if you wait until you feel like doing something, that feeling will never come, because you drop into a depression every day after work and you stop doing things. So there's no decision to be made. Monday, you're lifting. You don't feel like lifting, you just lift. Most people can say, if I only felt better, I'd go for a walk. No, if you went for a walk, you would feel better. If I only felt better, I'd go to the church service. No, if you went to the church service, you would feel better. So the first pillar very clearly is time management, because that's the biggest regret of police officers at the time of retirement. I wish I had spent more time with my kids when they were little. It's a sense of lost time. So time management, we don't teach it at academies, but time management is very simple. A couple of hours of time, personal time management would be very helpful, and keeping that calendar on the refrigerator. The second pillar is physical fitness. 22 minutes of moderate exercise. It not only reduces your risk of type 2 diabetes between 60 and 70%, it enhances mood. It's as effective as antidepressant medication. And it's the one thing you're not going to feel like doing, so just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. It's just like Nike says, just do it. We brought this 22 minutes of research, of exercise research, down to Australia with the cops, and they've really enhanced it. And they started putting stickers on their cars to say "Do 22," which I really like that motto. So we got the time management. We have the exercise daily, 22 minutes a day. I say just for the first 90 years of life, and everything will work out after that. And then,
that's great.
And the third thing and final thing is diversify your role investments. That means you're a cop, but you're also a team roper. You're also a violin player. You're also a church choir singer. You're also an elder in your church. You're also a marathon runner, a quilter. And those are things that are terribly important in balancing out the resiliency issue. And those are the things that when people face a very traumatic episode, those resiliency factors are what helps them get through it. They're not standing alone. They're anchored 5, 6, 7 different places. They have a sense of almost psychological community. And that gets lost in policing. Many cops rediscover it at about the 15-year point. They start getting back into skiing. They start getting back into biking. When I've asked somebody one time, I said, who's the first victim of all these lost things in your life? The guy said, well, he goes, the first wife. And it was like, we surrender so many police families. We lose them tragically. And when you talk to the older cops that are in the 9th inning of life, they'll tell you, as I look back, I ruined that marriage, and it was all my fault. And it was a very good marriage. I'll go to my grave with a regret for that. And you want to prevent that in the officers and having them. That's why it's one of the reasons we wrote the book. But it was also, we really try to champion this kind of information to officers so their life and their personal life and their professional life are successful.
Amen. Al, Dr. Gilmartin, this has been just absolutely fantastic. I can't thank you enough. I appreciate the time you've spent with us here. It's so important, as I expressed to you, on personal conversations. I've lost too many friends to atherosclerosis, heart attack, strokes, the results of obesity and diabetes, as well as I've lost more friends to suicide in the line of officers to suicide than I have in the line of duty deaths. And I've lost both, of course, but so this topic, this emotional survival for law enforcement, it's just holistic and it's so important. And I can't thank you enough for coming on. Your book, was life-changing to me, and I think it's life-changing for other police officers. Well, that was part 2 of our interview with Dr. Kevin Gilmartin. What a fantastic person. What a positive person. A person who loves our first responders, clearly cares about them and cares about their health, their mental health, their physical health, and their overall well-being. I hope you enjoyed that part 2 of our interview. And I encourage you again to subscribe and like the page, hit the bell button for notifications so that you don't miss the future episodes. Until next time, be good to yourself, be good to others, and as always, stay safe.